For every 1 million people who visit Hawaii, approximately 6 will drown. We record more visitor deaths due to drowning than any other place in the country, 13 times above the national average and 10 times the rate for local residents. You might be surprised to find out which ocean activity is linked most often to these fatalities. Hear what local water safety professionals have to say about this dubious distinction. This live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise. At least one person drowns every week in Hawaii. Ocean safety personnel say unfamiliarity with snorkeling and ocean conditions are the top reasons visitors get into trouble in the ocean. More than half of all tourists who do drown do so while snorkeling. From 2003 through 2012, state data shows that 102 visitors drowned from snorkeling compared to 13 residents. Most drownings happen in a saltwater environment, and the majority of the victims are male, 18 and older. The highest percentage of visitor drowning deaths doesn't even include the number of people who sustain other ocean injuries, which can involve spinal cord damage and paralysis. Joining us tonight for this discussion on ocean safety, we have the state's drowning prevention coordinator, a Hawaii County firefighter, a Kauai emergency room doctor, and an Oahu lifeguard. We look forward to your participation in our show. You can email, call, or tweet us your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guest. Bridget Valesco is a public health educator. She is the Drowning and Spinal Cord Injury Prevention Coordinator with the State Department of Health, Emergency Medical Services, and Injury Prevention Systems Branch. From my favorite island, Gerald Kosaki is a battalion chief in charge of special operations that includes rescue, hazmat, and ocean safety. He's been in this position for 8 years and a member of the Hawaii Fire Department for 27 years. Mr. Kosaki is a certified paramedic and is the co-chair of the State Drowning and Aquatic Injury Prevention Advisory Committee. Monty Downs is an emergency room doctor at Wilcox Memorial Hospital. His experience in the ER with drownings led him to assume a more active role in making Kauai beaches and oceans safer. He is currently president of the Kauai Lifeguard Association. And Kavika Eckhart is a lifelong resident of Waimanalo. He's been a lifeguard for 33 years and is now an ocean safety lieutenant for District 2, the east side of Honolulu. He's a skilled waterman and founding member of Hui Malama Okekai, an organization that cultivates pride and leadership in at-risk youth through ocean stewardship. Thank you all of you for being here tonight. And Kavika, I want to start with you. You've been on the water for 33 years now. How have you seen the issue with drownings, especially when it comes to visitors, change over that time?
Well, I believe it has a lot to do with social media. Social media has opened up different places for them to go. It's out like Makapu tide pools, there's spitting caves on the east side, there's, and so in this, tourists and people are venturing outside of their normal guarded beaches. And at a guarded beach, we can do what we do best, but when you're outside of a guarded beach, you're pretty much on your own until we can send a mobile responder.
Doctor, have you seen the same thing on Kauai?
Absolutely, but and I also think that we can eventually figure out how to use social media to work for us. I completely agree with Kavika that it's hurt us and opened up places that we have a place on Queen's Bath, for example, that my wife was born and raised on Kauai and never ever went there, and but it got onto the Facebook, and now there's hundreds of people there every day, and so I think I'm talking to some younger people that I think will be able to help us use the social media, and even some of the guidebooks are starting to use social media to our advantage and to say, okay, the cat's out of the bag, we can't help that, but here's things you better know about it. And times of year you should never ever go there, and at the other times of the year, here's the things you got to worry about. So.
Now, I know on Kauai and Maui, for instance, a lot of the problem are our visitors, but on the Big Island, for instance, it seems that the issue is actually more affecting residents. Can you talk about that?
Yes, well, on the Big Island from South Point to along the Hamakua coast, we have 85% of the drownings actually are resident drownings. And I don't like to speculate as to why they drown, but we do have a lot of shoreline activities such as shoreline fishing, OP picking, and just people just venturing along the shoreline. And because of that, you have people that, waves that come up and people fall in, the waves may sweep them in the water. And without any flotation devices, a lot of times they can't get back on shore. And by the time that we respond and go out and try and save them, a lot of times we don't find them and they end up missing.
The numbers are pretty stunning, and Bridget, I know you brought us some slides tonight. Let's dive into those if we could. The first one showing us ocean drownings in Hawaii between 2007 and 2016, if we could call those up. There we go. Tell us what we're seeing here.
So these are the raw numbers of fatal drownings in the last 10 years. And if you look at the red line, we're looking at our visitor count. And there's no real trend until you get till around 2013, and there's a little bit of an uptick and kind of disparate from the resident drownings in blue. And then you see a little downtick in 2016. We don't necessarily call that a trend. If that were to keep going down, that would be great, and we would call that a downward trend. But right now, we're not in a place of really noting a trend.
And if you go to the next slide, we're looking then at the total numbers. This is not the rate, that's the slide after that, but tell us here what we're seeing.
Right, so raw numbers of visitors from international destination, mainland, and overall, the 317 overall, compared to in the blue, Hawaii residents. Not that much of a difference in raw numbers. But then if we look at the rates on the next slide, we notice that, as you mentioned in your opening, the rate of Hawaii residents is much lower for fatal drowning than it is for visitors, as it is for non-fatal drowning.
It is pretty stunning. What do we attribute these numbers to?
So there's so many factors that probably contribute to visitor drowning, as Kavika and Dr. Downs and Battalion Chief Kosaki mentioned. We look at the behavioral factors. People come here, they maybe just want to have an adventure, they go out for those risky places, or they come and they want to relax and they put their guard down. They're in paradise, what could go wrong? There are also the skill factor. You know, we look at, most of us, we grew up here, we've lived here for such a long time that we've had the opportunity to just gradually acquire these skills to be around and in the ocean, which a lot of people, they step off the plane. This is the first time they might have even seen the Pacific Ocean, much less be in it.
That's got to be a challenge for lifeguards when you're constantly having to educate new people each and every day. Tell us about that.
So that's one of the things we've been really focusing on is talking to our visitors. So on any given day at the beach, let's say it's Sandy Beach. Sandy Beach is probably one of the first beaches that they'll come to or see if they drive from Waikiki towards the east side. And they pull on the side and they see beauty. They see how beautiful it is. They see the locals catching waves, and they don't see danger at all. So what we've been doing and focusing on is PR. We'll walk and talk to just about every visitor that comes to Sandy Beach or to the beach around on the east side. We'll educate them and explain to them the dangers and how many neck and back injuries we've had there. And then we try to get them to continue down the coast to a safer beach. So give them options. Send them down to Waimanalo, where it's nicer and it's more suited for the kids and it's more suited for the inexperienced. And it seems to be working well. But then you also get people who, no matter what, they want to get in the water. They've come thousands of miles, and we've heard it all. And they're going to go in the water anyway. So we'll educate them at that too. If you're going to go in the water here today, this is what's going to happen to you. This is what's going to happen. This is where you're going to end up. This is how you should get in. This is how you should get out. And it seems to be working for us.
I know on Kauai, Doctor, you have helped to implement a really effective program with the rescue tubes. Tell us about that.
Can I backtrack for a couple
Please.
minutes? Okay, I'm actually thrilled to be sitting here with Kavika, a lifeguard, and honestly, in another incarnation, I think I should have been a woman on a beach in what's the TV show?
Baywatch.
Baywatch, yeah. Because I love lifeguards. I really
There's still
love lifeguards. And he just described one thing that lifeguards do, which I call aloha ambassadors. And they're not in their station waiting for a call. They're there on scene talking to people, making preventions. They've taken on huge change in their job description from when I first came to Kauai, which was 45 years ago. Back then, a lifeguard sat in a chair and watched the beach in front of him. Nowadays, thanks actually to the North Shore of Oahu lifeguards, this rescue jet ski program came into being back in the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s, which has made lifeguards not just guard the beach in front of them, but make incredible rescues miles away. And I've seen it many, many times. And it's been I've seen them come in from these rescues, actually black and blue. And what I'm saying is that they've took on a whole new job description just because they like to save lives. And they didn't have a union saying, oh, this is beyond your bargaining unit's previous agreements or anything. They just said, the technology is there, we're going to do it. And the results have been incredible. I mean, there's been thousands of people who are alive because of new programs have taken with the jet ski and rescue sled. I really have to put that out there. That's an amazing thing, which has, on Kauai, we have 10 guarded beaches and 65 total beaches. So we have 55 unguarded beaches, and our lifeguards have made rescue after rescue miles away at these beaches, and with great courage in ocean conditions where you and I would be goners in moments. And so I had to put that in before we get to the rescue tubes. That, to me, absolutely the cornerstone of ocean safety is the lifeguards. And I hate to think of what our drownings would be if we didn't have lifeguards. So I'll get to the rescue tubes a little later, but I had to.
Thank you.
Well, absolutely, and the lifeguards are up against so much because, as we were saying, the population constantly changes. So once you've educated one visitor, they're off on a plane, and then the next one comes, and the next one comes.
And even daily. So you start in the morning, and you talk to the first 5 or 6 visitors, families that come down, and you send them on your way. An hour later, the next minute or two, there's a whole new group of people coming down. So constantly through the day, there's new people, different people coming and attending the beach. So we're constantly down there talking to people. And you have to, we've become really good speakers, and sometimes one person asked me if I was a salesman before, a car salesman before, because I would sail the beach down the road, and I'd educate them on today, surf is really strong currents, we have dangerous shore breaks, you know, your chance of getting hurt is really great here, but there's a beautiful beach down the road, 3 miles of white sand. There's shade for the lady, there's McDonald's for the kids. I mean, and you kind of get them down there, and I've actually gone to Waimanalo on my day off and met a family that I sent from Makapu, and they were at awe at that beach. And they thanked me, and they shared with me that they go to that beach every day now of their stay in Hawaii. So,
is there more, though, that could be done before that family gets to your beach, before they get to Sandy's? I know that there have been a lot of efforts, perhaps, to do videos on planes, videos at the baggage claim, perhaps something on in a hotel's closed circuit kind of system. Is there enough being done to that end to assist what the lifeguards are doing?
I think that's an important piece that should be looked into, on the plane, because they have that, you got that audience, they're sitting on the plane, and you can capture them at that moment. In the hotel room too, have something in the hotel room, maybe a little flyer or something that's on the TV. But I think that's an important part of educating the tourists about the dangers of the ocean here. Again, it's beautiful. To them, they don't see danger, they just see beauty.
Gerald, I know every island is different. On Oahu, of course, we have many more guarded beaches than on an island like the Big Island. What is the challenge there? How much contact do guards have with visitors? How much redirecting can they do, like Kavika was talking about, and how much are you relying on, the closed circuit systems in a hotel or the plane message, et cetera?
Yes, well, On the Big Island, of course, they call it a Big Island because it's big, and we have over 265 miles of coastline. Out of the 265 miles, we only guard at the most maybe 10 miles with our guarded beaches. And so we have a lot of challenges there. We started our jet ski or rescue watercraft program in 2015, and that has really helped our capability as far as being able to save people in faraway places, down miles like Dr. Downs had said. But overall, it is a challenge. In East Hawaii, we have a different challenge because it's more a rocky shoreline. We don't have as many non-residents or visitors there. But in West Hawaii, Hapuna, Magic Sands, Kahaluu, we have a lot of visitors. At Hapuna alone, we have over 600,000 visitors that visit the beach there. And so what we have implemented is a PA system like they do at Sandy Beach. We have a PA system or a long-range acoustic device at Hapuna, and we also have put on PA systems at Kahaluu beaches and the Magic Sands beaches. And in that way, we're able to reach out to the people swimming in the water when they look like they might get into trouble, or they look like they may be inexperienced. The guards can help and do some preventative measures there and let them know every hour they go on and they give a speech or they give a warning about, hey, the waves, although it doesn't look really big, watch out, there's a shoreline here and there's some rocks on the left side. And I think that has really helped in preventing injuries and possibly fatalities.
Are we able to get the message to visitors in time? Clearly from these numbers, we need to be doing a better job. What are we missing?
So we really want to catch the visitor even before, when they're Googling, where should I go on vacation next summer? We want to get on the websites that they look at. We want to be able to, as Kavika said, access them maybe through the airlines or through when they get off the airplane, different intercept points like that. We do have some static signage right now at the airports, and we're in the process of hopefully updating and evaluating that. And as well, being able to move through, if they are staying in a hotel, we do have some upcoming in hotel room. I think they're supposed to be in 30,000 hotel rooms soon, where it's kind of like you're forced to watch that PSA before you can actually watch anything else on the TV.
We, of course, like to involve our audience, and a question has come in tonight. With all the money spent on lifeguard signage, PSAs, what else can be done? If people don't prepare or educate themselves, what else can the state do? I mean, there is some personal responsibility involved here. How do we get the visitors to take care of themselves?
So what Kavika mentioned, he's a salesman, and really when we talk about PSA, messaging, we're talking about social marketing, and everyone here knows, get more sleep, eat more vegetables, it's good for us. We can get that education out there, but how are we motivated to take that positive behavior change, that step? And so one of the, I think, really incredible things that has happened over the last few years is we've really been able to get together a group of all these experts, sit down through the advisory. One of the partnerships is with the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and so we've been able to gain access to what visitors are thinking, how they tick, what motivates them through some different qualitative studies that we've done.
I know, Doctor, you were talking about how people are becoming more aware of sites that they hadn't been familiar with before, like the Queen's Bath you were talking about. Is there a way, do you think, that we can employ that same kind of social media to try to reach them, what Bridget is talking about?
Well, I'd like to say the cat's out of the bag on these places. It really is. And so absolutely, I mean, the things that have been mentioned. On Kauai, we have an airport video at the baggage claim area that's 4 minutes long that gives people where the lifeguard beaches are. Please swim near a lifeguard is a huge message that we have, but you're right, people don't tend to listen to, or many people don't listen to it. They have their own ideas. We're trying to get it into more and more closed loop systems in hotels, and we've had some success, but we're trying to get more success. And we have brochures at the airport racks where you see all the fishing brochures and stuff. We have ocean safety brochures right there. So we work hard at those things, not hard enough. I mean, there's still can't knock the rate down as low as we'd like to.
You know, I think there also is a balance, right, that the state has a vested interest in bringing as many visitors as possible. It is our #1 industry. It fuels our economy. So how do we get the message out without necessarily scaring visitors away?
Yep, that's
The million-dollar question tonight. Yeah. Well, Bridget, you want to take that?
Yeah, we don't probably have time to go through all the results we got, but we did some focus group testing. We did some surveys that the Hawaii Tourism Authority does. If you go on their website, you can look at all the different things that they question people about after their visit to Hawaii. And so some of the things we found out were that people are really in tune with kind of the Hawaiian culture coolness, and how can we use that to our advantage? You mentioned, you know, that behavioral aspect, people taking maybe responsibility. So we're kind of fine-tuning some of the messages that we want to go out, and one of those includes, you know, respect our ocean. Basically, come here, enjoy it, but there's that kind of responsibility aspect as well as the culture.
You know, Kavika, I want to go back to one of the things we talked about at the very beginning, and that was snorkeling. I think a lot of people will be surprised at just how many drowning deaths happen in shallow water. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So, for example, Hanauma Bay, it's one of the top snorkeling beaches on the island. We have thousands of visitors that attend the beach and snorkel. And it's amazing, I found in the last couple months of spending time down there as a lieutenant, on the people who are getting in trouble aren't screaming and yelling for help. They're not climbing the ladder per se as a typical drowning victim would be. They're real quiet, and they're just fighting it. And it's not easy to pick up when you have 1,000 people in the water head down, and just that one head is bobbing up and down really slow, and they're trying to make it to the reef, or they're trying to make it to a certain point. I think some needs to be educated there at the Bay when they have their video that they look at. I think they need to put more into educating that if they need to stand up, because I think inside the video it talks about the reef, and don't stand on the reef. Don't stand on the reef. So in their mind, they can't stand on the reef. And if you need to stand on the reef, stand on the reef.
How many people are we seeing lose their life at Hanauma Bay?
I can't give you statistics, but in the last year that I've been a lieutenant, I probably responded to 3 drownings at Hanauma Bay of snorkelers.
And I think people would be surprised to know that, just because you're surrounded by other swimmers. It's not like you're alone on a beach. You're in shallow water. There are lifeguards right there. But as you said, if you're looking at 1,000 people face down, how do you know who's in distress?
Right. Even the people around them. It's amazing how somebody can be in trouble, and there's 5 or 10 people 2 feet away, a foot away from them.
And I think one of the misnomers is, oh, it's so easy to snorkel. We've seen websites and we've overheard conversations, oh, I don't know how to swim, but I'm going to go snorkeling. So,
Doctor, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. We were at some very interesting lectures this last weekend. We had a statewide ocean safety conference, and a pulmonologist put out a theory that he's working on. But and what he was saying, and it's not proven, but he's studying it, is that if you have, there's 100 or 200 different kinds of snorkels out there. There's a $1.99 one you can get at your local supermarket, and there's a $100 one you can get, and many of them with different sized apertures, we'll call it. And if you get breathing through a straw for a long enough period of time, it's called the Muller maneuver, and that something bad starts happening with your lungs, and your membranes that normally keep fluid from going from your capillaries into your alveoli, into your air sacs. That membrane gets damaged and weakened by the stress of this, and some fluid starts going into your lungs without you drinking any, without you aspirating, without you going gulping in some salt water, just from internally, we call pulmonary edema. And so it sort of builds up slowly and insidiously, and by the time you're that short of breath, you're actually too weak to wave for help. And a woman, he actually had one of his patients come up and tell her that exactly what happened with her, and she was snorkeling, by the time she felt short of breath, she was too weak to move her arms. And so that's a theory that's being looked at. And other factors we think fit into it. There's a question of whether altitude itself from the airline flight, something happened with your lungs where maybe you best off not snorkeling the next day may be a possibility. And dehydration is also another thought that people have. You have a couple drinks the night before, which is a diuretic. Get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, which is another diuretic. Go spend a couple hours on a hot, sandy beach. So you end up dehydrated before you go into snorkeling. And adding all these effects together can bring on this, what we call non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, where your lungs fill up with water. And once that happens, your brain gets involved, your nervous system, and you're too weak to do what we normally think of, which is wait for help. So,
what can we do at a beach like Hanauma Bay? Kavika's talking about perhaps adding some messaging to that video. Do you think that that would help? Or, if you're talking about all those effects, that cascade of factors, by the time they're watching that video, it's maybe too late.
Well, we're trying. I think his suggestion to stand up is a great one, and if we conclude, and the studies are still being worked on, but if we conclude, hey, dehydration really is a factor, just try to get some education out there about that in the video at Hanauma Bay and in other videos that we have, or in other media that we have, and so that's my answer to that.
We've been talking a lot about visitors, but what is the message that you have for residents tonight, given that on the Big Island, the majority of the drowning victims are residents?
Well, it's just on one side of the island that's mostly residents, but we still have a lot of visitors on the West Coast that run into problems with snorkeling. And although we've talked about different types of snorkels and using snorkels and how it affects you physiologically, we have to look at, I guess, the different types, or if that is maybe the cause of somebody drowning. And we've had several drownings where people has used different types of snorkels, including the new one-piece face mask with snorkels. And we never captured any statistics on what type of equipment has been used in the past. And I think so now what we're starting to do is statewide trying to get some information and some statistics on what type of equipment were used for fatal drownings as well as non-fatal drownings, or we used to call it near drownings before.
So that we could have some kind of a database to know, because
Yes.
I know that kind of data is collected, for instance, in a scuba incident. We know what kind of tank was used, et cetera, but on the kind of drownings you're talking about, the data is not gathered until now.
Correct.
How long do we, when did that start, and when do we expect to actually have some good data to work with?
Yeah, we actually just started it this year. We started collecting some data, but we haven't had that many incidents yet. It's going to be a while before we can collect enough data, enough equipment to determine that a certain type of snorkel is the causal factor for a drowning or a near fatal drowning.
Doctor, I want to go back to the tubes now, if you would. I know that we had talked about unguarded beaches versus guarded beaches. A caller called in and said, since not all beaches can be equipped with lifeguards, is there data comparing drownings from beaches with lifeguards versus beaches without? I don't know if you have those kind of
numbers. The answer is yes. Your chances of drowning at a guarded beach are very, very much smaller than at a non-guarded beach. So moving on to rescue tubes, and tubes is kind of a misnomer to me. They're not really, they don't look like tubes, but they're pieces of foam about 4 feet long, a little over, and I wish I'd brought a picture, but they're flotation devices out of very high quality foam with a strap attached to it, so that you can throw the strap over your shoulder, swim out to someone without it hindering your swimming. And then before I get to you and you're starting to claw at me, I just hand you the rescue tube. And for a lifeguard, it's like a stethoscope is to me. That's nothing new about this. I've been a part of their equipment for years and years. On Kauai, we've started putting them on what I call stations on pipes in the sand at all these unguarded beaches. We have over 200 on Kauai. And we've had an amazing experience with them. I'll give you one example. About 12 years ago, there was a family of 4 from Pennsylvania, and the father got sucked out in a rip current. The teenage son went out after him, and they both drowned. And the mother and the sister were standing on shore, like within 50 yards. This is what we're talking about really here. This is why we're all here. These are the things that it's not just numbers, it's people, it's families. About 5 years ago, we had this exact same scenario happen at a very isolated beach called Larson's Beach. Father got sucked out of a terrible rip current, and he's allowed me to use his name. His name is Kevin Garvey. And his son Taylor still happened at the airport baggage claim and seen our video. That part of it talked about how to use a rescue tube. He looked around, he saw the rescue tube, grabbed it, went out after his father, and the two of them floated on the rescue tube. Meanwhile, someone called 911, and then the lifeguards kind of came in with their jet ski about 8 minutes later and picked everybody up, and it's all a happy ending. So those are 2 very similar scenarios, and our rescue tubes, to me, made all the difference. We've had 150 deployments that I've documented that I know of times that they were used. And I've shaken hands with 10 people that would have been dead if it weren't for the rescue tubes we have at these unguarded beaches. So we've been very fortunate on Kauai. It's been a program that's really made a difference. And I know that we've had 1 or 2 or 3 people a year not die because of them.
What is the investment of that? I mean, what is it actually costing to put those on beaches? 1
tube costs $55, and the piping and the stuff costs about another $30. So for $85, you can put one on a beach. The hardest part is maintaining the program, and I've got 200, and I'm very fortunate to have some great people, Bill Prinzig and Dennis Bosio and myself, who put in a lot of time going around to the beaches and trying to make sure that they are up and running and in a good condition. And there's some liability if the county can't really take it on as their own program, because as someone said earlier, if they did say it's a formal part of our county program and there was one and one wasn't there, then the county is saying, well, we have this program and we didn't keep up with it. But as a lay citizen, I don't feel quite that liable. Our association, Kauai Lifeguard Association, does carry a $2 million liability insurance policy in case some kind of horrible case scenario happens. But we've been very fortunate not to have any bad scenarios, and they've all been good. So.
And how many of the tubes do you have on the Big Island?
We have approximately 31 tubes on the Big Island. We started implementing this program approximately about 2 or 3 years ago. And like Dr. Downs had said, it's not a county-run program. It's a lot of the funding is through private organizations like the Rotary Club and the DeRego Foundations.
And what kind of a difference has it made?
It made, we had a few rescues, and one especially great rescue at Pololu Valley, where a family of 5 was out in the water and caught in the current. And an off-duty firefighter went out with 2 rescue tubes and brought in 2 people at a time. And they actually, he saved them. They were actually on the last breath out in the ocean. And he managed to get all of them back to shore. Even the father was the last one in, and he had to be carried up the beach because he was so tired from being out in the current that long.
Now, had that tube not been there, the rescuer may have been able to go out and perhaps save 1 or 2 people, but certainly not all 5.
Maybe, and that's possible. We cannot speculate too much, but without a rescue tube, having a flotation device, like Dr. Downs talked about earlier, if you don't have that tube to hand to the person for him to grab onto, and Kavika must know it too, that a lot of times if you come up to the person, he might just grab onto you. So, you might have a double drowning.
Mm-hmm. We have no such tubes on this island. What difference do you think that would make here?
I think it would make a great difference. I responded last week to a drowning at Spitting Caves. The call came in as a person screaming and yelling for help at Spitting Caves. I got there within minutes. 3-4 minutes from when the call came in. And when I got there, the people there shared with me that he had just went down under the water. He had gone down 2 or 3 minutes ago. So I was there 2 or 3 minutes from when he got down. If they had anything to throw in the water and to give them that much more time for us to get there. Our jet ski got there probably 2 or 3 minutes after me. So within 5 minutes, we had 3 minutes I was there, 5 minutes we had a jet ski on scene in the water. And that's all we need to do is try to buy that little bit of time. And I think throwing anything in the water, a rescue tube, a buoy, a cooler,
A surfboard.
yeah, anything to be able to throw and just buy them that much little bit more time is a great asset.
Now, in that case, I'm somewhat familiar with that drowning. In that case, the person who drowned was someone who was trying to attempt a rescue.
Well, correct. The woman who he came with decided to jump in at Spinning Caves, even being warned not to go in the water prior to jumping in. She jumped in, and when she was trying to get out of the water, she got bashed against the rocks. And so he went down trying to help her. He wasn't a swimmer. He couldn't swim. And so he got washed in. He didn't want to get in the water. He got washed in the water, and he drowned.
How often do you see that the person who is the drowning victim is actually the person attempting the rescue?
It happens often. It happens really often. We've had one at Makapu Tide Pools, where the father was down there with his 2 daughters, and the daughter got washed in, and he jumped in to save her, and they both drowned.
You know, cases like that are so devastating. It's hard to say whether if a tube had been there, it would have made the difference, but you want all the help you can get.
Correct.
Are there any efforts to try to give you guys those resources, or to give the public really those resources?
I think so. The Rotary Club, or I think the Lions Club in Hawaii Kai, we passed them out. They had a day where you could go down to Manulua Bay boat ramp and pick them up. I don't know of any that are out there to, as the doctor said, on a pole or something for somebody to use. I believe the city won't do it because of liability, but we're looking into having private entities putting them out there.
I mean, it's really tough when you hear that there's an $85 solution out there that could make the difference, and the real holdup is legal issues.
The role of the EMS and injury prevention branch that I represent is really to work through the public health approach, and that includes making sure that we're informing and recommending best practices. And so what we have done is go ahead and survey, do a little evaluation of the Kauai Rescue Tube program, and really the 2 main concerns that we hear, and we've spoken to mostly to lifeguards on Oahu, but elsewhere also. One, the double drowning, or just any type of injury to the lay public. And then 2, as Dr. Downs so eloquently said, we don't want to supplant the gold standard, the lifeguards that are out there. And so if there's any feeling of threat, we don't, that's definitely not the purpose of the tubes. And so the results, some of the results did show that we did survey first responders on Kauai, both fire and lifeguards. And it was about a 97% rate that said that they do support having the rescue tubes in their community, and 100% recommended for other communities. And there was about, I think it was about a 30, or a little higher than that, percent that did express concerns, but it was for the first concern, which was that lay rescue injury or death potential. So they didn't have as much of the concern about being supplanted by the tubes.
Gerald, I see you wanting to jump in here.
No, no, I agree that rescue tubes are the way to go, and Maui has just began implementing their rescue tube project also. But lifeguards, of course, we need lifeguards on the beaches. That's the best, and the best practice is having a lifeguard there. But lifeguards cannot be at every beach, and lifeguards cannot be there 24 hours a day. And a lot of these rescues and incidents happen when the lifeguards go home, at the end of the day or early mornings. And just having something there, some flotation device, would make a whole lot of difference in saving somebody's life. And like you said, $85 for a rescue tube, I guess you can't put a price on a life saved.
Yeah, well, and Kavika also mentioned that the gentleman who did attempt that rescue is someone who can't swim. I know that here in Hawaii, we actually do have a number of residents, a fairly high percentage of people who can't swim. Are there efforts to try to educate more young people to be able to swim and perhaps save themselves so that they're not in these situations to begin with?
Yes, well, we're part of the Aquatic and Injury Prevention Advisory Committee, and we have a subcommittee on there that has a youth water safety initiative that they're working on that would bring learn to swim programs back into the schools to help educate and teach second graders to at least just go in the water for a week and at 25 minutes at a time, just to teach them the basic skills of swimming. We're not going to be teaching them to become Olympic swimmers or to be able to go on the swim team, but our main focus is just to have them save themselves in the event that they fall into the water or they somehow get swept into the ocean.
Do any of you know offhand how many of our young people can't swim? I mean, do you have data on that?
No, but we're asking the nonprofits that are going into this on the subcommittee to go ahead and start keeping track, doing some pre-survey and then post-surveys, and that would be included in that. So hope to get that.
And just one of the stats is drowning is the #1 cause of death for children aged 1 to 15. And just having them, and majority of the swimming or drownings that happen with children is not only in the ocean, but a lot is around in the pools. And it's not by not being supervised, because you can be 10 feet away and somebody just falls into the pool and drown as a result if they don't know how to survive or just to keep themselves afloat.
That's a pretty shocking
If
statistic.
I could add to that, I've started a at-risk youth kids program in Waimanalo in the 90s, and I don't teach swimming, and I teach these kids how to be comfortable in the ocean. And I share with this with the parents, and I share with this with most people, is that you don't have to teach the kids how to swim from point A to point B. You need to get them to understand and how to be comfortable and relax. And that's all you need to teach them how to do. How to float on your back. Most kids can float on their back. And what is the key? Being relaxed. And if you're not relaxed, you can't swim. So I teach them how to relax. And that's the key word, relax. And I've had many kids in the 19 years that I've been with this program that have come back to me, who have gone in the water and gotten into trouble, and I've remembered what Uncle Kavika told them, relax. And they go, I relaxed, Uncle Kavika, and I got out of the situation. I made it back to shore. I have kids who have told me that they've actually gone in the water and told their friends to relax. That's all they needed to do, was relax and wait, because that's gonna save them. I don't believe you need to teach a child or a kid how to swim from point A to point B. How to be comfortable in the ocean is the key.
Yeah, we're talking about survival skills here, really.
Can I add on to that? We had a very unfortunate incident at Hapuna a couple of years ago when we had a 13-year-old boy who jumped in the water with his friends, not knowing how deep the water was. And this child didn't know how to swim. And so once he jumped in and he realized that he couldn't touch bottom, he tried grabbing onto his friend to save himself. And the friend, not wanting to drown, kind of had him, had to save himself, and went to the rocks. And by the time he got to the rocks, he looked back, the other boy was gone. And we searched the area for 3 or 4 days. We couldn't find the victim. And eventually, we did find the victim, but he was in a crevice way under the rocks. So we had our rescue divers go in and had to retrieve him in this very confined space underwater. which really put our rescuers at risk. It's a very harrowing rescue, but it's just unfortunate. Like Kavika said, if the boy could have just relaxed and able to float until somebody saw him or somebody could call for help, he would be alive today.
Which is the same way to survive a rip current, by the way, to relax and go with the flow. We try and educate visitors about that. If you do get pulled out, it's just exactly the same thing as if you start fighting against it. Yeah. But if you relax, go with the flow, and then figure out.
I love that word, relax. That whole word of relax. If they can click into that relax mode and just say, I need to relax. On your back, look at the sky, and relax. Sooner or later, with cell phones, somebody's going to call 911. We'll get somebody there really quick.
This comes in from a caller tonight. The statistics shared showed local resident versus visitors. Is there any data based on English versus non-English speakers? Are all the forms of information available in multiple languages? I mean, we do have an increasing number of international visitors. How are we tackling that?
Exactly. As the markets open up for the China and the Japan markets, we get more and more international visitors. So in terms of messaging, definitely we want to make sure that there are different languages. There was a comment on one of our last focus groups that the hazard signage that is out there now on the beaches is only in English. And the Japanese visitors, even though some of them in the focus group do and can read English and understand, they just didn't feel like those messages really pertain to them because they weren't in Japanese. So that's definitely something that we want to pass that message on to our partners at DLNR to make sure that that signage eventually can keep up with our visitor demographic.
And we talked a lot about reaching the visitors perhaps in their hotel rooms, but as people start to do Airbnb and have these alternate vacation rental experiences, they don't necessarily interact with the front desk. What do you think is the best method to actually get this message across? And even on the plane, they've got a cell phone, they've got a magazine, they've got their iPad. Are they really locked into that screen? Are they actually receiving that
Exactly,
information?
right. So it would be keeping up with the technology. So bringing on the mobile apps that are attractive to somebody. Right now we have something called the Hawaii Beach Safety website, and that word safety in there probably isn't the most attractive to most people coming on vacation in Hawaii. So we're in talks with Hawaiian Lifeguard Association, who owns and manages that website, to go ahead and let's get the funds to change the name and update that website, so that, because it is really a mobile app, but it can, it's a website, but it can be used like an app on phones.
Doctor, you're interacting with patients who have, experienced near drownings. What are you hearing from them? What is the biggest mistake that people are making?
Well, some of them can't talk because they're, rip currents is the ones that actually make it to the ER. I don't get to see 99.99% of the work lifeguards do. They do all the hundreds of thousands of preventions, and then a lot of rescues that are quite straightforward, and the person gets to the beach and he's okay, doesn't come to the ER. So the ones that I tend to get in the ER are the ones that I'm really having to work on, maybe spend a few days in the intensive care unit and stuff. So the vast majority of those actually are rip current problems. And where our lifeguards have, again, where they've made these wonderful saves, sometimes at quite remote places. So I can't really give you a good answer to, other than what I just did, that rip currents are, we've talked more about snorkeling, but rip currents are a biggie too.
What are you hearing from the people that you interact with on the beach? What are the mistakes that people are making?
Not knowing what they're getting themselves into. I think they come to the beach, and again, they see a beautiful beach. They see the local kids in the water doing their thing. It looks fun. It looks easy. They don't know how to identify a rip current. And the rip current can move. They can come to the beach and there won't be a rip current at that moment. And 10 minutes later, when the surf gets big and it comes in, it creates a rip current and they get caught in the rip current. So that's where we go back to educating. I mean, we're constantly walking up and down the beach and talking to people and educating them and filling them in on what the current is and trying to get them to go, and if they're not suitable for that beach, go to another beach. And I call it, we're rescuing all these people that we talk to on the beach. We're rescuing them on the beach. We don't need to jump in the ocean to make a rescue. If we didn't talk to these people, we would be running up and down that beach and jumping in the water and rescuing many, many people.
You know, as a layperson, what can we do to support the lifeguard effort? You know, I mean, Dr. Downs is right. You know, you're doing incredible work all the time. As an average citizen, what can we do to help to bring these numbers down?
I mean, talk to people on the beach and educate your neighbors, your friends. Go to a guarded beach. Go talk to the lifeguards. Know your ins and outs. Know where you're going to go into the water, how you're going to get out of the water. Think about worst case scenario. If that happened to you, how are you going to get out of it? So it's a thought process I think people need to do prior to going into the ocean.
Gerald, do you agree?
Oh, yes, of course. There are so many hazards on the beaches and along the shoreline that people can get into trouble with. You know, of course, one is the big waves and the current. But there's also, you know, smaller waves, and people tend to overextend themselves, thinking, you know, that they feel more confident, like because the waves are not that big that they can ride those waves, and they end up going over, and we have a lot of spinal injuries during those times. Other times it's right along the shoreline. People walk and look in the tide pools, not knowing that, you know, if it's wet, there's a good chance that waves come up on the shoreline, and so they walk along there, turn their back to the ocean, which you should never do, and end up a wave comes, knocks them in, and they get swept in, whether they can swim or not, or sometimes we don't even find them. And so, you know, it's multiple things. But as far as how we can help the lifeguards, it's, you know, just obeying the signs. And, you know, I know we talked about looking at the signs and how many people don't know what the signs mean. They had a focus group that went and did a survey on people, showing them signs like dangerous shore break and waves breaking on ledge and strong current. And 1 out of 8 people knew what that sign meant. 7 out of 8 didn't know what that actually meant. So, you know, like you brought up, you know, how effective are the signs? So coming back to the lifeguards, which they are the true ambassadors for Hawaii. They should, they go out, and people that go to beaches should go to a lifeguarded beach. That would be, that's the safest area.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 out of 8 not knowing what the signs mean. We talked about perhaps doing some early education. Perhaps should that be included in the education as well, so that at least, you know, from an early age we can read the signs?
Exactly. That's what part of the plan is. You're in public health.
I have a heroine who's a cashier at Foodland, and every person that checks out, she says, be careful. You know, those 2 words, you can go into the details, rocks, snorkeling, rip currents, but so she's a local lady, and so you can get the word out enough in your own community to work together in that way. Person sitting next to you on the airplane, strike up a little conversation. So a lot of it can be done without massive programs, although massive programs need to be done too, but just one-to-one caring, malama, taking care of each other.
Kavika, I'm going to give you the last word tonight. We're almost out of time, but what do you want people to know about what you do and how we can support you?
Lifeguards. Lifeguards are a special breed of people. What we do at the beaches is not something that you can really be taught. I think most of us are born and raised into lifeguarding. We're watermen. We grew up around the ocean, and we've seen lifeguards do their thing, or we come from a family of lifeguards, and that's just our passion. Swim where there's lifeguards. Ask a lifeguard if you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some people who feel like, oh, I've been going to this beach forever, but maybe today it's a little different.
Correct, and every day is different. Every day is another day. Every wave is different. The currents are different. So yeah, it's being able to read the ocean, ask a lifeguard. We're more than happy to give you information on what you need to know and do prior to going in the ocean.
Okay, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Of course, we thank our guest, Bridget Valesco from the Hawaii State Department of Health, Monty Downs, an emergency room doctor from Wilcox Memorial Hospital on Kauai, Gerald Kosaki, Battalion Chief for the Hawaii County Fire Department, and Kavika Eckhart, Ocean Safety Lieutenant for District 2, the east side of Honolulu. Next week on Insights, the Malama Honua worldwide voyage of Hokulea drew worldwide attention to the message urging everyone to care for each other, our oceans, and the earth. What will be the next journey for Nainoa Thompson and the Polynesian Voyaging Society? Will the spirit and energy behind this amazing accomplishment take on a new mission, but this time on shore? Join us for a special edition of Insights a week from tonight right here. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui ho.